Yes.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm glad you came to our presentation. It will be about Graphene and Droidium in action. Firstly, please let me introduce myself. I'm Juraj Huska. I work for Red Hat. I work in Jquery's quality engineering team. And more importantly for this presentation, I'm a Graphene committer.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stefan Miklosovic. I'm author of Arquillian Droidium, and I'm also working in Red Hat, and I'm a colleague of Juraj.
Okay, so shortly about agenda, what you will hear or see today. I would like to introduce you to Graphene for those of you who haven't heard about it. Then I would like to go more deeply into some its hottest features, and then
next half will be about Droidium. I will introduce Droidium, what it is about, and after that, we will see Droidium in action. How does it actually work?
Yep, great. First question: what is Arquillian Graphene? To answer this question, please let me give you some background of quality assurance work, what we do. So this is how writing or maintaining tests can look like. As you can see, the setup is fragile, it's complex, and it's very easily to break, actually. This is how maintaining of tests can look like. It's really difficult.
True story.
We often find ourselves to violate a lot of rules which developers are so strict about. We are every time repeating ourselves in our test suites. And that's why we often feel like this, We are really mad. Frankly speaking, I feel like this every time I find some false positive or false negative test. And we would like to show you something to improve this. So the first part of the answer what Arquillian Graphene is actually what is Arquillian. So what is Arquillian? It's an integration framework for integration testing. It consists basically from core and some extensions. And nice features about it that it can support continuous integration. It's very friendly towards to your IDE. It aims for rapid test development, so you are able to run all of your tests from the IDE.
As Juraj said, Arquillian is extensible, and we would like to emphasize this fact. Droidium is also some kind of extension, so Arquillian is based on extensions as Droidium is.
Great. Better than 1,000 marketing words, maybe will be some code. So how Arquillian crash course can look like for those of you who haven't about it. So this is Arquillian test. This is how you can mark a test class to be an Arquillian test. So basically you just use a JUnit runner with Arquillian class parameter. Then you can use two of the Arquillian modes. First is client mode, which basically means that your tests are running in different JVM than your application is deployed on. Then there is another mode which is called in container mode, and this mode is about running your tests in the same JVM as your application is deployed on or is running. This is first noticeable feature of Arquillian. It can inject to your test a lot of useful objects. Arquillian is really built on top of dependency injection. Here I'm injecting, for example, an URL of the application I'm testing of, and also I'm injecting here instance of WebDriver, which is basically an object which I can use to interact with the browser. And Arquillian will start that browser for me, and after the test, it will destroy it. As I said, Arquillian can do plenty of free stuff for you. Another stuff is that it can start your favorite application server, and it can stop the application server after the test. And also it deploys an application for you, the application you are going to test. This is the way how you can declare the application you are going to test. So just easy using of deployment annotation. What is important here, the test is really similar to unit test. This is a test you know from JUnit, really simple unit test.
So to sum it up, it's quite easy, right? Everything is defined in a test case itself. You just have deployment methods. You are injecting every source you will need during the test run. And of course, you just use some, you need to run this test with Arquillian test runner, and that's it. It is just basic JUnit test, but it is kind of enriched.
Yeah, so this is how you should feel right now. I hope you feel like that. If you have done some integration testing before and you started container by yourself, you deploy the application by yourself, this is what Arquillian can do for you for free. So you can aim actually for writing the test, which is what you want to do actually. Right, what is Arquillian Graphene? The next part of the question, what is Arquillian Graphene? Basically, it supports everything what Arquillian provides you. This is the first nice feature of Arquillian Graphene, and aims for functional testing of your web pages. It's built on top of a WebDriver. Maybe some of you know that project in the name or with the name Selenium 2. We think that it's WebDriver on steroids because it provides a lot of small features which enhances the usability of WebDriver, and also it's my favorite painkiller. Okay, another crash course for you. This is how Arquillian Graphene test can look like. What is the difference, or where is the difference between Arquillian test and Arquillian Graphene test? Firstly, you have to wire up your test and the page you are going to test somehow. This is the way how it is done in plain WebDriver. Arquillian Graphene is reusing this and enhancing it. So you are just injecting elements to your test. By use of find by annotation, you can easily inject elements according to their names, or another strategies like CSS or ID of the elements. This is how Arquillian Graphene basic test can look like. Here I'm testing a Google page. So what I'm actually doing here, on the first line, I'm just opening the Google page. On the second line, I'm typing some keys to the input on the front page of Google. Then I'm hitting the search button, and here you can see the first Graphene feature, noticeable. It's his Fluent Fluent Waiting API, sorry. You end up, when you are testing, you end up with a lot of waitings in your test. I'm sure you know that you have to do this because your test is often much more faster than the actions which are done on the application you are testing. That's why you have to wait for those actions, and it's really important to have these waitings in a readable way, and I think that our Fluent API in Graphene is doing this. So if you did some WebDriver testing before, and you saw some of the features of Graphene already, I think you should be pretty much amazed, because it's really doing a lot of stuff for you. Now I would like to move to the, yeah?
Question. When exactly are elements injected? I mean, there's a browser to get it. There you have find by annotations. And when are they injected?
They are injected to the test class object.
Yeah, but when?
There is a complex life cycle of Arquillian. There's a really lot of events, and once a drone is, I don't know if you know Project Drone, but there is another project or extension in Arquillian which basically provides you a browser instance. It stars the browser instance for you. After the drone is initialized, then the Graphene is starting to initialize, and there are a couple of events, and after Graphene configuration, the enrichment of the test class is done.
Okay. Maybe it's just me, but I still don't get it. I mean, those are elements from the class, from the web page that you are.
Yeah, I know probably where you are aiming. The browser starts for you. The page is not loaded there. Therefore, that's why the Graphene will inject just proxy objects for you. Those are proxy objects which are resolved in the runtime of the test.
Yeah, against the last page that was loaded.
Against the page which is actually now loaded in the browser.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for the question. Now I would like to focus on some of the features I haven't talked about yet, which you can read more in the documentation, which we think are nice. First feature is Jquery, using of Jquery locators in the Graphene. You often find yourself with sometimes you have to, or you are short with the possibilities which WebDriver provides you, CSS name or ID. And for example, as here I'm finding a button which is visible. Consider there are more buttons in the time on the page, and you want just that one which is visible. This is where Jquery locators are handy. Then I would like to maybe talk about some testing patterns. If you guys know the WebDriver, you should already be familiar with page objects. It's a testing pattern which are aiming for enhancing the readability of your tests. And what is Graphene adding in this field? It again enhances its usability. So my first riddle: what is wrong on this page, in this piece of code, when you consider it?
Everything.
No. There are small flaws. The first flaw is that the test page or the test is tightly coupled with the HTML of the application you are going to test. This is a problem because every time there is a change in the application HTML code, then every time you have to introduce that change into your test. And this is the way how you can also introduce the bugs into your test. So this is what is page object pattern about. It's about encapsulating the underlying HTML into separate objects and also providing some methods to work with those objects. So this is how page object for front page of the Google can look like. As you can see, there are just two elements, the input and the button you can see on the front page, and then also the method to work with them. This is how page object for the result page can look like. How the test is changed when you are using page object pattern together with Graphene. Firstly, Graphene provides you page annotations by which you can inject the page objects into your test. What is important, those objects are already initialized. When we are using just plain WebDriver, we have to initialize those page objects by some factories. And also, then the test is kind of shorter because you are just calling the methods from the page objects. I hope you agree with me that the test is now more readable. It's more, the intent of the test is more clear, I think, now. This is why there are page objects, why there is page object pattern. Great, so we improved the maintenance. We came from this to this. And Arquillian Graphene is not stopping here, doesn't stop here. It provides you another patterns. Another pattern which we recognize in the Retraces QE team, we call page fragments. Its aim is more for reusability of the tests. And also it improves the readability as well as the page objects. And if you implement it in a correct way, your page objects can enhance the cross-browser testing for you. So what is the difference between page objects and page fragments? This is how an implementation for autocomplete page fragment can look like. Really, there is almost no difference between in declaration or in the implementation of the page objects and page fragments, you again are using find-by annotations to wire up your page and test application. Then you are providing some services which the page fragment can do for you. Like if you imagine a form with 3 inputs and every input is autocomplete, those 3 inputs can provide you these services. What is important that is the same code to interact with the autocomplete in one page, in another page, or in the third page. So this is why we think it improves the reusability, because if you consider some component-based framework like Bootstrap, Rich Faces, or anyone you want, or Jquery UI, if you want to interact with those components in your test, you are doing in the same way in your test suite. So if you have 3 applications, in every test suite for that application, you are dealing with those components in the same way. This is where page fragments comes handy. So there are services and help methods. Here you can see the main difference between page objects and page fragments. The main difference in injecting of the page fragment, because when you are injecting a page fragment, you have to declare also the root of the page fragment. What is the root of page fragment? Again, if you consider page with 3 the same page fragments, like 3 autocompletes, you have to differentiate somehow between or among those 3. And this is the way how you can differentiate among them. Because every of that autocomplete has some unique element, which we call a root of that element. And in your test, you can define which autocomplete you mean by declaring the root of the element. I hope it's clear. If I would like to talk about this thing really quickly. If something interesting for you, don't hesitate to stop by after the presentation and we can talk about it more deeply. And the test then is also enhanced because it just uses the services of the page fragments. Okay, we again something improved. We improved the don't repeat yourself rule because we came from this to this. If you consider it, we now have just one implementation which we can use across all our test suites for all of our applications. And this is why in the Rich Faces team, we are now currently making some effort to provide a page fragment for every Rich Faces component. Great. So now some smaller features which were added to, let's say, Graphene 2.0 final. This is way how plain WebDriver is dealing with elements which reside in some frame. Consider 2 elements. One is in frame. The second one is not. To work with those 2 elements in your test, when you want to somehow interact with the element which is in frame, firstly you have to switch to that in frame, which is done on the first line. Then you can interact with that element. After that, you have to switch back to the default content to be able to interact with another components. So we think that those 2 lines are not so, they are, let's say, redundant in the test. So we want to get rid of them, and you can get rid of them by using of in-frame annotation. Above your injection point, where you are injecting the elements, you just declare in what frame or in-frame the element resides in, and then in the test, the Graphene will automatically switches to the in-frame, back from the in-frame for you. My second riddle for you, is there anything wrong at this page, at this snippet? And just don't tell me that it's wrong because it's in Java. Anybody? Okay, I will tell you. We already improved the page objects. We are using page fragments, but there is still some flaw. The flaw is here. every time in the first action of your test is usually loading some page into the browser. And even more what is wrong here is that the URL of the page you are testing is hard-coded in the test. So we can improve this. And Graphene provides you an encapsulation of the URL of the page you are testing by providing a location annotation. This is how the location annotation is used. In the declaration of your page object, you can just use the URL of the actual page you are going to test. How the Graphene is using this location annotation, firstly, together with initial page annotation, annotated a test parameter, the Graphene will start or load the page in the browser for you for free. So now the test, as you can see, is without the loading the page. The Graphene will do it automatically for you. And also there is another API you can use, and it's Graphene method goTo. So this is another way how you can use the location annotation, just passing the page object class to the goTo method. And the page will be loaded in the browser for you. Okay, so those were small features added to the, yeah? Of course. I'm not sure if I understand it correctly, but you want to inject to your test a URL.
I have 4 instances of the same application, let's say different versions,
Yep.
different versions.
And you are testing them in the same time?
Hopefully yes, or different tests, but you still have to hard code in the front page the URL.
Mm-hmm.
You inject this somehow, so parameters, annotation.
I'm still not sure if I get it correctly, but isn't it about injecting you are running the application in different containers, and what Arquillian can do for you is injecting the URL of the containers to the page, which will be different because I now get it. The Graphene or the location annotation is also working with the deployment of the application. This location can be either a relative or absolute URL. Now it is absolute URL, but when it is a relative URL, then it is resolved according to the deployment. So if you have 3 deployments, there are 3 different URLs, the location will be resolved according to that deployment. You can read more about it in the documentation, or you can ask me after the presentation. So those were features added to the Graphene 2.0. There are a lot of more features you can read in the documentation, because we have really awesome documentation, so check it out. That's what everything from me. Remember that maybe those features are small in scope, but if you want something big, you have to make these small improvements. Then you can really enhance the readability, reusability, or robustness of your test by making these small changes. And now, Stefan will tell you why we think that Graphene and Droidium are good buddies.
All right, so thank you very much, Juraj, for your part of the presentation. I would like to proceed to the other half. Can you give me this one? As you have already seen, you have really good possibility to test web pages. You have really strong tools in your hands in order to simplify your tests, in order to make them easier to maintain, and so on and so on. So web pages are okay. But when it comes to mobile phone, the situation is not obviously so clear. So the question is, what about mobile phones? Are we going to functionally test them as well or not? in Red Hat, we are always trying to kind of think out of the box and around the corner, and we try to push ideas further and further. And the result of this effort is called Arquillian Droidium. We are believing that the world is going to be more and more mobile, and we just can't ignore functional testing of mobile phones because it is prevalent that mobile app testing is going to be really serious business. So what is the Droidium? From the very high level, Droidium is extension. As we have already said, Arquillian is pretty much extension-based, and Droidium is not an exception. Droidium is extension for Arquillian, and it glues together specifically Android platform, so it doesn't deal with iOS. It deals with Android. It also glues together Selenium WebDriver, so that's the way how the name was invented. It also integrates Arquillian Drone, which provides you with which injects for you browsers into the test. And also, of course, you are writing your test with Arquillian Graphene API. As when Juraj was talking about applications, these applications do not live in a vacuum, right? So they have to be deployed somehow, installed. And in Arquillian, there is abstraction of containers. Container is a place where you deploy your applications in order to test them. And we just took a similar approach with Droidium. When it comes to containers, there are in two modes. There is a remote container and managed container. A remote container is a container which exists on its own. So it is running even before you run your test. And the managed container is a container which is started dynamically upon every test execution, and it is stopped when the tests are done. Droidium supports both of these tests. So it means that managed container in Droidium means that Android emulator is automatically started for you, and it is shut it down after tests are done. And when it comes to remote container can be, for example, your mobile phone in the pocket. So you just use this real physical device. Or it can be an emulator which is already started for you. So first of all, Droidium is container adapter for Android. When you have Wildfly container, when you have Glassfish container, Tomcat container, and so on, there is also Android container, and it's an implementation of container adapter. What does Droidium solve? So it functionally tests web applications, which are indeed deployed on a regular container, for example, like Wildfly, but that application is tested from an Android point of view. So that application is loaded in Android, and you are tested it from there, not from a desktop browser. And it is done so by web plugin. Droidium has two plugins. First is web plugin, and the second is native plugin. By web plugin, it uses a so-called Android server from Selenium project. It is just basic APK, which is deployed to Android emulator or physical device, and it integrates with embedded browser, Android browser, web browser. So it WebDriver can communicate with Android. Functional testing of native Android applications like APKs is done by native plugin. Native plugin uses so-called Selendroid server. Selendroid server is Third is a project which integrates with Droidium pretty much, and we rarely depend on it. Role of Solendroid in Droidium is as follows. For every APK you are trying to functionally test, there is also deployed along with this APK Solendroid. So there is strict one-to-one relationship between tested application and between deployment of Solendroid server. Solendroid server instruments application under the test. Instrumentation is made in terms of Android instrumentation. And Solendroid translates JSON wire protocol for 200 native calls, which drives application. So when you have a WebDriver, the Graphene sends some JSON wire protocols to the other side, and Solendroid is for translating this JSON wire protocol to the internal calls for Android, which drives your application. So what is the workflow, right? When I have some web application, I need to test what is this going to look like. You just write your web application as you are used to. Then some container or containers are started, Android container and, for example, Wildfly container. After that, the web application is deployed to the Wildfly container, but tests are executed against the emulator or Android device via Graphene API. When you want to test native applications like APKs, workflow is pretty much the same. You just code your APKs you are used to. You start Android container. To that container, you install that APK as is. This is a really important point. You just do not have to modify your APK in any way. You just compile your APK, and it is good to go. And after that, when you load web pages when dealing with web testing, you need to do kind of the similar thing when it comes to native testing. So you have to start Android activities. So activity is something like a web page, right? And it is also done. After that, you just write test by Graphene calls. So a really important thing is that there is absolutely no difference between testing web applications or native APK applications or even hybrid applications, which means that there is a web view in a native application of Android. From the code, there are no exceptions. You are dealing with the same APIs, and Graphene rules them all and everything. So it is really much the same way. And as I said, there is one API which you are used to, and you just do not need to switch your head in any way, and you just do not need to learn anything. Really important abstraction is that when Juraj explained page objects, we put equal between page objects and activities. So, for example, when you have Google web page, that's a page. But when you start the Android application, we just said, well, Android application and activity, it looks pretty much the same as web page, right? There are some also elements, and it behaves in the same way. So why not? I would like to proceed to the demo, which shows what I have already explained. Any questions? None. Okay. So it will be really, it is really quite simple, just proof of concept of what I'm saying. There is a kind of to-do application. You have a to-do application like you are putting there some tasks to do, like buy a milk or go for a walk and so on. There are two clients. There is a web client, which is running as an ordinary web page in a web browser, and there is a mobile client, which acts as a native Android application. And these two applications are communicating in the background with a server which is deployed to the JBoss AS. I think I will just firstly run the demo, and then we can show the code. So it pretty much integrates with IDE as you are used to. This is really a big advantage. You can debug your test your web test and your native Android test as you are used to. So let's start it up. I have already started Android emulator. So this is kind of a remote mode for this container. Android emulator is considered to be container. And JBoss container is going to be started. So it is managed container. This one is a remote. So in the background, the application server is starting, and Droidium or Arquillian does this for you. It starts application servers automatically. And we are waiting for browser to be appeared on the screen in order to execute the tests. Yeah, Firefox is here. What is this? We need to switch to the debug view. Okay. So this is page which is already loaded for us. With Graphene, we just need to log out, right, to the web client. So we'll just do this. We logged in, and we entered some project like groceries, whatever, like for that to do. After that, we just enter some tasks to do. We just need to buy some milk, and we add it to our test. All right, so it is there. It is added. After that, we just try to do the same thing, but with Android emulator. So there is application loaded. We have logged in, and you can see that there is a task from the web client. After that, we can enter another task in a mobile phone. So some mobile task, date, we add it. All right, so it is also added to the mobile phone, and we can see that it is also added to the web application here on the bottom. So we can really nicely see, we can just debug our application, we can step our application, and we can see how exactly this will behave when we are trying to integrate web application and just Android application which is native. And after that, we just need to log out from the test. We logged out from mobile phone, right? And we also log out from web application. And emulator was started in remote mode, so it means that Droidium doesn't shut it down. But JBoss container was started in managed mode, so it means that it is shut it down after the tests are done. And when we try to look at the code, this is basic. This is really just the unit test as Juraj has shown. You just run it with Arquillian runner. You just need to run it as a client. This is a black box testing. You are viewing this from the outside. And after that, there are some injections of drone. With this browser, you are interacting with a web page and with another one with mobile. There are two deployments. First deployment is deployed to Android container, and second deployment is deployed to JBoss. To Android container, you just deploy APK, and to the JBoss container, you deploy just AR. After that, there is a definition of elements. You can see this, for example, a login mobile page. This is a typo, sorry. Page. It is page. So this, when you look on that page, there are some elements with you are interacting. So, for example, this username field is a field you are typing your name in a native application. And after that, tests are executed. So, for example, first test or the second test, you just write some project and so on and so on. You can do asserts as well and everything. So this is pretty much easy. I consider this to be pretty self-explainable, and writing the test is just the kind of joy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's we are running out of time. All the examples are hosted on the GitHub, so you can check it out, or you can ask us after the presentation. Thank you very much for your time, and as I said, if you have any question, just stop us and ask. Thank you very much.
Možno odpověď?